So I've got this to a point where I can say it's finished. It's never going to be finished. For as long as you're stuck here until either you get rescued or are forced to move or die, you want to keep working on the shelter, keep throwing more material on the roof, keep making it more waterproof, keep cleaning the shelter out and keeping the place nice and clean, just like you do with your house. It might take you a whole day at the bare minimum to get the frame up and a roof to a point where you might say, yeah, that's a roof, I can go in there and sleep in there. It may not be fully waterproof. It may take you a second day, a third day, and onwards to keep making the roof thick enough to make it waterproof. You want the roof to be like a foot thick. The thicker the better, the more material the better. Now, of course, you're going to have other things to do. You can have fires to make, collect firewood, food, water, well, not so much food, but especially water, collecting water, filtering, boiling water. You're going to have all these other jobs to do, so you want to get your main structure down, at least a roof. I'm not saying a finished roof or a waterproof roof, but a roof finished, and then you can do other tasks. And then as an ongoing project, you keep working on the shelter, and it may be a never-ending process for as long as you're here. You're going to start to put on the larger material first and work your way down to the smaller material. Small leaves are going to fall through holes in the roof and go inside. That's okay if some material falls through. I've started with palm fronds here. Palm fronds are a very handy material. They cover the whole roof. In theory, I don't even need a roof frame with palm fronds, but so you want to start with your larger material. Palm fronds obviously are good. Ferns, bunches of ferns are very good. Large leaves, and then your smallest leaves you want to put on last. Unless of course you weave a very good frame with vertical and horizontal timber pieces and have very small holes which will hold your leaves in place. The palm fronds can hold the leaves in place quite well, but you can put enough timber supports to keep the leaves in place. And of course you've got your main vertical lean-to supports. I've talked about those in a previous video, the numbers and so forth. And then you weave smaller, thinner, more pliable sticks and twigs and so forth in between those vertical supports to make horizontal supports. You should be lashing all your main lean-to supports to the ridge pole. You can lash the horizontal supports, but again, if you weave them through, you can make a nice frame. And then of course, grass is a good material. If you don't have large leaves and so forth, I think you want to start putting grass down before you start putting small leaves. Bunches of grass, I'll show you up close. Basically this hay material, like dead grass stalks are okay as well. You want to cut green grass off instead of pulling the grass out, because the grass is going to regrow as a renewable resource. But dead grass you can collect. Long, either green grass or dead grass, just handfuls can be shoved in. You start from the bottom and work your way up, and that's going to sit on a frame a lot better than small leaves. You can start throwing small leaves on top if you want. You can see over here, I've actually retained my roof. I've built a bit of a retaining wall or a backstop here. I'll get up close in a moment. That's an option, or else you can just have mountains of leaves coming down and spreading out on the ground like that. I need to keep this open as a walkway, so a retaining wall is a good option if you've got less room and so forth. And you may also save material. Here's an option here. What you can do is drag in these big logs. If you put lines of these big logs all the way around your shelter, which I have done on this end alcove and that side, the other side, as you saw, was a retaining wall that I built out of stakes and poles. You don't have to go to that extent. I've got these poles, big logs you can drag in. This forms, again, a barrier, a part of a wall, more security. It might stop animals coming in. It might deter some snakes from coming straight through. And it forms a backstop, again, for material, a handy retaining wall. And you can keep putting more poles like this. If you just have poles, you just keep improving, putting more poles in, more sticks, doesn't matter how long they are, on top of the frame you've already made. And you can put that on top like that to keep, a weight to keep the roof material down so the wind doesn't blow it off and so forth. So that's another option where you just keep adding wood and so forth in. Offcuts of material. I've got palm frond offcuts. I've got bits of wood in there to build up a bit of a frame, a matrix, and on top of that, just keep putting more material. I've got all these small sticks I've stacked in there. palm frond offcuts, any sort of wood, small bits of wood. It doesn't have to be long 6-foot poles. You can put small bits of wood in there just to fill in the gaps and put grass, leaves and so forth on top like that. I've got palm fronds coming around to about here. Let's move the camera again over here. On this end of the shelter, I haven't used palm fronds for 3/4 of this way, just to show you different materials and so forth. It'll be unfair if I use palm fronds all the way around. That is the most handiest roof material. But you may not have palm fronds wherever you are. And you can use green grass. These are dead grass stalks. They happen to be rice, old spent rice stalks from the rice fields behind my house. But again, handfuls you shove in there, and I've got a really nice thatched roof. You can put more poles, as I said, like that, just on top, bang, to keep the material in, whatever you like. Underneath this grass, I've got more sticks, even sticks that long, just piled up. Anything you can to make a nice roof frame behind. Weave in small sticks, small twigs and so forth. Just as an example, a small stick like that. Anything you can shove in there to make that matrix. Again, long grass is better than small leaves. On top of this now, I can throw mountains of small leaves and so forth. What you also want to do is keep everything vertical. The palm fronds, the fronds face down. Water tends to want to flow along things. If you understand how water flows, you can make a better roof. Water just doesn't want to fall through, it's going to flow. So have palm fronds facing down. The grass and things, keep vertical. Now I've got all these horizontal, that might be a mistake, but who knows, we'll see what happens. But try to keep things vertical. Water tends to want to run down. Try not to have areas where water can pool and so forth. I've got logs all the way across here as a backstop, a barrier. It may stop animals. It's a backstop and retaining wall to hold material in place. It's also a firewood source. I can now hack off, chop off bits of tinder with an axe, machete, or carve off with a knife and so forth. So it's a firewood source as well. But it's a good psychological barrier. If I'm inside, I know I've got a good barrier around my shelter, and that's also a psychological boost. The more material you throw on, the better. Over the ridge, especially, has to be thick. It can be thinner down the bottom. There's going to be less water and so forth. It's away from your shelter, but the middle part, the ridge, is where you really want to waterproof and throw more stuff up there. And underneath, of course, I've weaved a very good frame. The vertical supports, a lot of thin, pliable sticks weaved in to form a very good frame. Everything's got to be weaved and interconnected if possible. You can just lay sticks up, sure, but you do ideally want to weave in a good frame. And the test is to get one finger. If you grab any one pole in your roof frame and pull it out, the whole roof should move like a trampoline. And I showed that in a more detailed video. This is just a summary video after the event. Let's look at this angle here. You can see the roof. This is where I've got the palm fronds underneath. You keep throwing long grass, leaves on top, banana leaves and so forth. Keep throwing stuff over. I've got the retaining wall here. Just stakes coming up with long poles to form a bit of a retaining wall, and it forms a nice backstop for your material. And also the poles, again, you can just put poles in like that, bang, like that, and the retaining wall or the logs form a nice support for more poles like this. Here's a heavier one here, you can throw up like that, bang, just to keep the stuff in, and throw more stuff underneath it like that. So the options are endless. You can see here, it's just there's a short pole right there. More long grass, rice mulch here, being held up by these logs, and you can see how that works for the palm fronds.